Hi, you're watching 20 Questions with. I'm Harry Reardon. Thank you so much for watching. Before you do anything, like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified for more. Thank you very much. James, how are you getting on?
Good, thanks. You?
I'm doing very well, thank you. So, first of all, can you explain what financial domination is for those that aren't familiar with it?
Well, I think to put it simply, financial domination is when men will pay a woman, usually over the internet, but I suppose sometimes it can happen in person. He will give them money, and generally, you don't really get anything in return. Just the sort of the rush of doing it a lot of the time.
Where does this rush come from? Is it from the guilt or being cool, or just the thought that that's your money gone?
Well, I think part of it is the thought that it's your money gone. I mean, it seems that the more money you send, if you send a large amount, you get more of a rush and a thrill than if it was just a couple of pounds. And then obviously, there's also obviously a bit of guilt, but that usually sets in afterwards. That's usually sort of after you've done it, then you think, oh, what God, what did I do? And then you start to end up in a cycle where you've got the rush while you're doing it. And then afterwards, you'll spend a day, 2 days, a week, depending on how much you've sent, really regretting it. And then sometimes you end up starting the cycle again.
Absolutely. Do you want to say a bit about where you grew up and what your early years were like, to add a bit of background about yourself?
I mean, I grew up in Worcestershire. I mean, I've got a mum and a dad who are married. I had a, pretty standard sort of middle class childhood, really. Nothing out the ordinary. Very happy, really, overall. Bit lonely, maybe, but other than that,
Do you think that's where this need for this kind of thing came from? Maybe needing a bit of attention over the internet, trying to find it where you weren't getting it in your home life?
Well, I do think that could be a possibility because I mean, I grew up as an only child. So I'd sort of have to amuse myself pretty much all the time when I wasn't at school. I'd be allowed to have friends over occasionally, but most of the time it was me on my own. And even to this day, I mean, I've got a few friends, I'm married, but I still do generally spend quite a bit of time on my own. I mean, I work for myself, and that's on my own as well. So, I
What
am a kind of person who does spend a lot of time with just myself.
what were your parents like with you growing up? Were they funny with money, or were they?
Not really, no. I mean, my dad's always been a person who, when he's got money, he'll spend it really. I mean, not to excess of, leaving himself with nothing, but like every weekend, we'd always go out for meals on Friday nights, Saturday nights. Sometimes in the week, we'll go out as well. So, you know,
When did this all start for you? What was the first? What was the first instance of splurging money on?
well,
Who does your money go to?
well, my first instance of doing it, because the other day, I was thinking about it before I heard from you. And I was looking back at some of the things. And my very first time was about 8 years ago. There were these clip sites where you can buy clips for various messages and things like that. And I bought a financial domination one where I watched it. I didn't send the money. I think she asked for something just like $50 or something like that at the end. And then I started to buy more and more of those because the videos were only, three, four, $5 or $6 a time. But I'd never send the money. I'd just watch the videos. And then eventually I discovered a website called Night Flirt, where they have a lot of financial domination on there. And the one thing they have is they have these messages where they're like emails within the website, but you have to pay to view them. So you'll pay, say, $25, $30 to view the message. Then it'll have some text, usually a few pictures, occasionally a video file, but then it'll be, you need to send. Click here and see what's next. And then you'll click it, and then that's another 25, 50. I mean, the one lady on there, I got a bit carried away. In one day, I think it was about £900 I ended up spending. And you just don't realize it when you just keep clicking OK. The problem is it's so easy to do. You just don't necessarily realize quite how much you've spent till you tot it up at the end.
It's, I suppose it's a thing of the dangers of the internet. The amount of parents that have given their kids iPads. I've been seeing this in the news, and I had an angry mum turn up to a restaurant I was in, and she made her son work for free almost because he had spent up to £300 on a video game. Wow. And it's because you don't realize when it's just over the internet. How does your wife react to this sort of thing?
Well, I mean, I managed to keep it from her at first for most of the time until things got a little bit more serious and I'd moved on from night flirt. And then I told her about it, but thankfully she's pretty open-minded. So she's not necessarily happy that I'm wasting my money on it. And she thinks I shouldn't be doing it. But at the same time, you know, she's not going to go mad at me or leave me over it because she knows I am trying to stop it. And lately I have started to improve quite a lot from where I was 6 months ago.
Let's go back a little bit to your early life. Is there anything that sticks out to you that might have led to you becoming that prone to addiction, or, you know, when it comes to financial domination in your later life?
Well, possibly. I think one of the main things that has affected me in my life was when I grew up on a night after school, I'd usually go to my grandmother's house because she'd always play with me. And basically, she was like my mother, really. I mean, my dad's always busy at work. My mum was always off doing things. So, you know, it was nice to have someone who gave me attention. And then, unfortunately, she died of cancer when I was 17. I was just about to do my A2 exams. So it was I was under pressure. I managed to get through college fine and went on to university. But I mean, I can't really put it into words, to be honest. It just changed everything. Ever since then, I've always felt like there's just a slight, some kind of hole. And I've tried a lot of different things to fill it. But I don't think there's a real solution to that.
How was your grandma with money? Did she ever try and instill any sort of values when it comes to savings or anything?
Yes. She was always very, very careful with money and would always make sure that I knew that as well. I mean, when I was small, I was growing up in the 90s and the internet had just started to be a thing. So that was back when it was still dial-up. And if I wanted to go on the internet, she used to give me 50p a week, and it was a penny a minute to go on the internet. So I would have to use my pocket money offer to pay to use the internet. So little things like that did sort of, instill the value of money into me.
Absolutely. And how did you first discover that you were into financial domination?
I mean, well, like I said, I first discovered it with those videos. But the thing that really kicked it off properly was after Night Flirt, I then found it on Twitter. And Twitter was a whole different ball game because there you've got the instant messages where you're typing to them, they're typing straight back to you. So it's a lot more sort of real time rather than just a video. And it's a lot easier for them to sort of get under your skin and get into your head. And also, obviously, when you're talking to someone and you feel like you're building up that sort of rapport and relationship with them, you'd feel bad if you just sort of disappear, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think they rely on that a little bit as well.
Did you ever fall into the OnlyFans sort of, or the Admire Me sort of, I don't want to call it a trap?
Well, no, thankfully not. I've always, since about 3 years ago when things really kicked off, I've always stuck to Twitter. But I mean, last year I had a good year business-wise, and I came into a bit of money, but I was going to save it, but I ended up spending on this one in particular, £9,000, which was all the money I made off this one particular extra job, plus all my loads of money anyway. I mean, the worst day I ever had was in one day. It was about 2,500 she took me for in an hour.
How did your wife? Yeah, how much did your wife kick off?
Not particularly, to be honest.
No?
But she always just leaves all money matters to me. I mean, she doesn't go without.
So,
I've never got to the stage where, I can't pay rent because I've spent every last penny I've got on it. I've
yeah.
always managed to at least have enough self-control that it's never gone that far.
Have you ever thought that it might or been tempted to?
Well, yes, I have thought that it might. I mean, I don't know how dark you're prepared to go since this is going on YouTube.
Very dark.
This American one, who's the one I sent that huge amount to. She's the only one who's ever really got in my head. It was spooky. She could get me to just basically do anything she said, and I just couldn't stop myself. I've never had that experience. But I think part of it is when she messages you, instead of just she types a message, you type a message, it bombards you. You will be getting like message constantly. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, it'll be going off and waking me up. And she'll demand I go into the other room and start talking to her on there. And then, I mean, her tributes, she calls them, are $100 a time. Whereas a lot of the other girls are usually 20 or 30. But she's 100 plus, and it just keeps growing. And that'll be every 3 or 4 minutes. And she just sends abuse of how much she hates me. And how if she was there, she would come and she would just strangle me. Or she'd slit my throat, and things get quite nasty. But at the same time, I mean, it makes your heart really race. I know it sounds ridiculous, and I agree it is, and it's mental, but it really does give you some, I suppose, excitement. I mean, my life as a whole is probably a bit boring. So it gives you that, sort of living on the edge kind of feeling.
So let me get this right. So you wake up at, say, to like 3 a.m. to some texts from a woman in America.
Yeah.
And she's like abusing you. She's giving you shit. She's like, and then she's like, oh, by the way, for me to do this, you now owe me £100.
Oh, well, she's worse. She'll keep going and getting worse. And she'll say, I hate you. And you're never going to be rid of me. She literally, I mean, even now, I managed after a certain really dark incident happened about Easter. I haven't messaged her since. Well, she keeps going on how she's going to ruin me, destroy my life, basically drive me to suicide. And I mean, she goes on and on. It really like bombards you with it. And this is over, months and months, almost constantly. Quite often she'll do it in the middle of the night as well. So you're sort of, half asleep and a bit woozy, and she'll just keep doing it and doing it. And then she'll get you to take shots sometimes as well. So you're drunk while she's doing it to you. And she just somehow gets in your head. But I mean, she then starts sending photographs of people cutting themselves and things and razor blades. And then she's like, you want to. And then she keeps going on. And then eventually she demanded that I send her $500. And at the moment I pressed send, I had to get a razor blade and cut my arm here. Now, I've never done that before. I've never, ever been into self-harming in any way. But I did do it. I've still got a slight scar on my arm. And that's from 3 months ago. It still hasn't quite gone. Because I'd never done it before, I must have cut too deep. It didn't stop bleeding for ages. It was terrifying. But after that, that's when I drew the line and I've tried to stay away from it. Because, I mean, that messed with my head for a few days afterwards. I was thinking, how the hell can this have happened? How could I not have gone that far? I mean, there's fun, and then there's whatever the hell happened there. That's like way
Does your wife understand the extent that this has been taken to?
Well, she knows about that because, I mean, I literally ended up calling her in because we had to try and stop it bleeding. I mean, it was dreadful. I mean, the cut was quite deep, so it literally did not want to stop. So she understands the extent physically, although I don't think she quite grasps quite how much has gone financially. But at the same time, it's nothing that would have just been money put aside. It's not money that, has directly affected her life.
Yeah, but like, what did she say about the cutting?
Well, she was just horrified at first. I mean, she obviously didn't want me to do it again, and she was angry with the American woman. I mean, that's why ever since then, I have not, gone near her, and I have deliberately tried to stay away from it as much as possible. I mean, I've had a couple of relapses, but they've been with other people and for a lot smaller amounts.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I have actually stopped myself in the middle of it and gone, no, enough's enough. I've just pulled up some of the messages off her.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
I kept it. Obviously, I don't want to reveal her identity because I don't want her suing me for defamation or something. So, but she, well, I don't know how much of this I can say.
No, we can say
I suppose
anything.
it can be edited out if it goes too far.
Yeah.
But this will just highlight some of the things. She says, I would never let you touch me, but for some sick, twisted reason, I want you to fuck me just so your wife can see you fucking an actual bad bitch. I said, okay. And she put, I want her to walk in. Then I want to, after destroying your marriage, convince you to end it all. You're already suicidal. I'm going to make sure I take everything. You'll leave nothing to your wife. You won't even want her to be your wife by the end of the day. You can't stop. You won't stop. You're so fucking dumb. I know what's in your mind. I control your mind. You'll never be rid of me. There we go. Send $600. So I then replied, sent. And she put, seriously, you can do better than that. So I sent her another 300 and replied, I've just sent another 300. You're annoying as fuck and attention seeking. Send another 380. You're paying for my new speaker system. Send to my PayPal unless they're trying to shut it down again. So I put sent. I mean, you can see how little the gaps between me sending huge amounts are. I'm not really exactly getting anything in return as such, am I? I mean, I'm not getting photographs, videos, or anything like that. I mean, things just really get twisted.
Are you still in contact with this woman?
No. Ever since Easter, I've blocked her, but I've just kept the tweets. I suppose I should have deleted them, really, but I suppose I spent so much money on them, as it were.
Yeah. Can you remember the first time that you ever gave money to a financial dominatrix?
Well, properly rather than just through videos and things. It would have been on the night flirt thing.
Yeah.
But obviously that was still through email. But the first time in actual person was on Twitter. But that was just, it was a tiny amount. I think it was £10.
How did that feel as opposed to $9,000?
Well, it felt exciting. It felt, quite a rush, which I suppose is the same kind of rush I get now when I was sending her 600 or 700. But over time, you just end up just falling deeper and deeper, and things just escalate.
When did it start becoming problematic in terms of your spending?
Well, I think it would have been around last year when things started getting problematic. Partly because of her, but at one point I was having her, but there was another one I was also talking to who wouldn't let me go because this other one was into blackmail, and she'd got my wife's number and email address and photographs of me with a sign saying that I serve this lady. And so she was blackmailing me with that. So at the same time, I was literally having to pay both of them for several months. So at the time, I maxed out my MasterCard at 3,300. I'd also was sending on coffee, which lets you use PayPal credit. So I'd got $2,500 on there, as well as sending actual money I had got. I mean, it did get a bit, you know, just mad. But I noticed when I was spending it on the credit card, you just doesn't bother you in the same way. If I used my debit card and the money was coming out my bank account, I think about it more than on a credit card.
Why is that?
I think it's just because well, I suppose it hits where it hurts, really, doesn't it? I mean, on a credit card, you get the feeling that, you haven't necessarily got to pay this $600 back instantly. Whereas if it's straight out of your bank account, that's your actual money that's gone.
Yeah, but you eventually have to pay back that credit card, right?
Which I have paid off now pretty much. I'm down to a few hundred. But yeah, I mean, that's why I've cut up my credit card and deleted it from everything. So as soon as it's paid off, I'm not going to use it. But it's just one of those things they use that just makes it feel easier. So then it's easier to just keep going.
When did you open up to your wife about your addiction?
Well, it would have been, I think, I'm trying to remember exactly. It would have been last year, around the time, I think it was probably after the first time I'd really ended up in a thing with this American one and sent her about 1,500 in one day. Because I mean, it was really exciting at the time, but afterwards, as soon as you're done, it just hits you like a sheet of glass. You're just thinking, how, why, what the hell have I just done? You start beating yourself up over it. And then I told her, and we agreed that I need to stop. And ever since, I have been really trying my best to stop. I mean, I've got a chalkboard that I keep a tally chart on of every day I've managed to stay away from it. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it really is an addiction, just like a person can be addicted to drugs or gambling. I mean, I imagine the rush you feel must be very similar to someone who walks into a casino and places a huge bet on a roulette wheel or something similar. The difference being they've got a chance of winning, whereas with Findom, you definitely aren't going to win.
Have there ever been times where you've suffered financial hardships on account of your addiction? You say for the most part, you've managed to somehow keep it together, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't want to say I've never suffered, true hardship, as in losing my home or something like that. But it has meant that I was being more careful with what I was spending on, fun stuff. I'd avoid sort of, going out to the theatre or something like that, so that the money could be spent, usually trying to pay down the credit cards a bit, but then they'd soon go back up probably faster than I was able to pay them off.
As now that you've kind of been kicked it and you've been doing well, has
Yes.
your wife helped in the recovery process?
Well, I think she's helped indirectly. I mean, I promised her I'd try and stop. So I think because I made a promise to her and that I am trying my best to keep it, that's given me a lot more motivation than if I'd have just been a single person on my own. Promising yourself doesn't give you that same level of motivation as if you're trying for someone you really love and care about.
No, of course. And what overall impact do you think this addiction's had upon your life?
Well, it's definitely made me significantly poorer than I would have been. I think that can be a definite. I mean, over the last 2 years, I've got to have spent £20,000 plus.
Wow.
So that would be what? Probably a big chunk towards a deposit on a house or something of that nature, possibly. But also, I mean, when I was dealing with that American one in particular, it took me to a dark place mentally. I mean, the fact I was, physically harming myself, and she kept trying to, edge me towards literally killing myself. I mean, she stated her ultimate goal was for it to be sort of like her to be able to watch me do it.
Wow.
So
I'm assuming you're not the only person that she does that with, right?
no, I'm not. And her tweets boast about it. But I think that draws more people in because I think once you've started with the sort of the tamer, nicer people. Like any addiction, you're always searching for the next sort of level, the next high. So people end up getting drawn into it, and you read it and you might think, oh, she's just joking, it's just sort of a sales pitch, but it is actually true.
Yeah. Do you think that financial domination is ever a healthy sexual interest, or would you say that financial dominatrices prey on other people's addictive natures?
Well, I would say that I have dealt with quite a lot, probably about 90, even 100 different DOMs over my time on Twitter. I mean, a lot of them are just plain and simple in it for the money, and they've just seen other people doing it and just think it's free money. So they're just, I suppose, out to get what they can. But then you've got some who actually do care, and they are quite, they're quite genuinely nice people. I mean, they don't always ask for such ridiculous amounts of money for starters, but you can tell that they genuinely do try and do things, and they do get you to, do various tasks for them and things like that. It's so there's more of an actual service, as it were, going on. But then you do have that smaller section who are in it for the money, but they know just exactly the things to say and what buttons to sort of push, be able to get people really hooked on them. And just, well, you've heard my story, you see what can happen.
You say 90 plus dominate, like, are they all paid
Yes.
from you?
Yes, but some of them, it would literally only be, you generally have to send them a tribute before you can talk to them, or they won't reply back.
Wow.
So if you're looking for one, you'll have to send £20 to one, say hi, you get a couple of messages. They usually go, okay, you've sent the first tribute, now double it. So you have to send again. When you get that, that's normally ones who don't really know what they're doing. They've just seen other girls do that. So I see that as a red flag now, that they're not necessarily experts at it. But basically, you could end up going through 4 or 5 at 10, 20, 30 pounds a time before you find one you click with. And then you have your session that will then cost you, well, sky's the limit, really.
Wow. And they're doing this with how many dudes a day?
Well, depending on the girls, could be a lot. I mean, the American one has about 5 regular guys, some of whom she takes for considerably more than she took me for. I mean, we're talking the one guy, he's actually put his house, he's mortgaged his house and has sent her all the money from it.
Wow.
She's, I mean, we're talking, she's a whole other level. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking tens that she must honestly make several thousand a day.
That's crazy. It's just it's absolutely nuts. What's your take on people who think that financial domination is unethical and should be banned?
Well, I don't think you can ban it, really, because it's like anything else. If you try and ban it, people will still do it anyway.
Yeah.
You can't really ban anything. I mean, look at prohibition in America in the 20th century, the war on drugs. People just will do what people want to do, regardless of whether it's banned. It'll just push them underground. And then if people are doing it, there'll be even more shame and stigma attached to it. And it'll be even more difficult for them to tell people and try and get help.
How much of a role do you think stigma plays in preventing people from getting help from financial domination addiction?
I would say it plays quite a bit. I mean, I haven't told my parents about it at all. My wife's the only one I've actually told. So I think there is quite a bit of stigma around it. But at the same time, it's just such an odd thing because, I mean, although it is sexual, at the same time, it's not, I don't really know the best way to phrase it. It's got more of an addictive thing than most sexual things would. I mean, it's not like someone paying an escort to go and have a BDSM session with her or something. This is more of it's more of a mental thing, more of a mental rush and a high. I mean, the nearest thing I can think of to it is gambling, really, that sort of rush.
Yeah. What else do you think could be done to help people overcome this affliction?
Well, I mean, at the moment, there's literally nothing really to help. I mean, there's a few odd articles about it, but I mean, most of the therapists tend not to really know what it is and don't really know how to deal with it. And then you've got quite a lot on Twitter where you search for help. You'll talk to people who say they'll help, but really they're DOMs in disguise. So after talking to them for a while and then finding out what sort of things you've been doing, they will then actually start getting you to send them money.
Like, oh, that's sneaky. That's is that something you've had to deal with yourself then?
Yes. I mean, if you put in on Twitter, if you put in the words FinDom and doctor or FinDom and therapist, you'll see for yourself some are obvious that they're not real, that they're just pretending. But there are others that do seem very genuine, and you could be talking to them for several hours and then it will slowly change.
Yeah.
And,
Have you
by
ever?
that time, they've learned exactly what buttons to push and exactly what your sort of thing is that you're into.
Yeah. Have you ever sought help from a real therapist?
No, I haven't. I've tried to deal with it myself. And I
And
think
how did that start?
well, I mean, that started mainly, my big push was after I cut myself. I mean, that just, totally changed everything really
What
for
was
me.
the first step to going, okay, I've got a problem, I need help? What was the first thing that started you off?
Well, I mean, several times it'd be after I'd spent all that money, and I'd be going afterwards. I'd be going, "Oh God, why have I done that?" £2,000. How can I have been that stupid? I mean, that's like I'd have to work for several weeks to make that much money, and I've just blown it in an hour. It's
Yeah.
completely crazy. And then I try and stop. I mean, I try and stay away from it, but then before you know it, you just, oh, I'll just look at them, I'll just read some, I won't message any. And then you start getting messages. I mean, the American one, when I've blocked her, she just creates other accounts and messages me. And also, I've had phone calls in the middle of the night as well. It's difficult
It's
to get away sometimes. It draws you in, gets you hooked, and then it doesn't really want to let you go when it thinks there's easy money to be made.
yeah.
So you really have to try and, fight against it to get back out.
Have you ever told any of the dominatrices that you feel you've become addicted? If so, what was the reaction?
Well, I've told a couple, yes, round about the time it was happening, and the reaction was good. Off the one, it was good. I like you to be addicted, and it's better you send me the money than anyone else. And you don't need the money. It belongs to me. You work for me. I should get every penny you make, etc.
They really stay in character, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other one was totally different to begin with, where it was just, okay, then you don't have to send me as much money. Just send me £5 a day just to prove you're loyal, which did go on for quite a while. But I mean, that's what, about £30 a week, which I suppose if you were sending that over the course of a year would soon add up to about 500.
Yeah.
So, and then there'd be odd other tributes. But then even she, after a couple of weeks of that, it was her birthday. So I had to buy her these designer shoes that she wanted, which was £600. I mean, £600 for a pair of heels is, well, a bit mad in my opinion, but
Yeah, I mean, did you tell your wife about that one?
no, I didn't mention that one.
I feel like you might have to. That's um that's crazy. Yeah. What advice would you give to people struggling with financial domination addiction?
I think advice wise is just don't beat yourself up over it. If you manage to stop and you manage to get through 3, 4 days a week, and then you end up doing it again a little bit, don't just give up. Just think, I've done it for 3 days. This time I'm going to do it for 4 days, 5 days, and just, just realize that, like with any addiction, relapsing is going to happen. You just need to sort of, if you can stop yourself while you're doing it, good, because then at least, I'm in that stage now where at least then I can stop myself and just go, I've stopped myself before I've sent, a fortune. That's it. I'm getting better. Things are improving. But that's a later step. But if you can just mark the days and then just each time try and do more days than you did last time.
One step at a time, right?
Yeah. Just try and give yourself that bit of positivity and just don't beat yourself up too much over it.
Yeah. What do you think are the main misconceptions that people have about sexual addictions like this?
I think one of the misconceptions is obviously that we must just basically be mad to do it and that we could easily just stop it. People think you could stop it as easily as just turning your computer off, but it's the way it works when you really far down into it is insidious. It just gets in your head, and even at the most random times, it'll just pop into your head and you'll just feel like doing it. Yeah. So it's a case of fighting it, really.
Do you think more could be done to warn people about the dangers of online sex and porn addiction?
Well, I suppose more could be done, but I do think that if someone's going to do it and they've decided, you're not really going to be able to stop them. But I would say if anyone's curious, you might start off just sending 10, 20, 30 pounds a time, but it does escalate quite quickly. So you need to sort of, if you're going to do it, try and at least make sure you're not using a credit card and set yourself a limit and don't let yourself go beyond that if you've determined to do it, because otherwise you end up just getting carried away.
What's your take on the nature versus nurture debate when it comes to addictions?
Ooh, very good question. I would say that I think your situation can affect how susceptible you are to addiction. Obviously, my situation, I suppose the fact that I did end up feeling like there's something missing and being lonely has had a part to play in that, definitely. If I suppose if I was one of these people who's, got loads of friends and they're always out going to the pub or what have you with them or playing lots of sports, you'd never really do this in the first place because I suppose you'd be too busy with them doing that. So I do think that the nurture could be quite a big factor in it.
Have you thought about trying to branch out and maybe find a hobby or something like sports or something to sort of try and take your mind off it?
Well, yes, it might sound silly, but I'm getting into a game called RuneScape a lot at the minute now. And I've made quite a lot of friends on there.
Yeah.
Although it's not in real life, but with all this COVID going on, it's difficult to really do much in real life now.
No, of course.
So we're, we log on, we hang out, we chat, we go off doing quests and slaying various monsters and mini games and things like that. And that doesn't really cost anything. So I think it's a first step, really.
What do you hope to get out or achieve from this interview?
Well, I think part of the reason I did it was just so I could talk through it with someone else, just maybe to get it straight in my mind and see if I could come out of it with any new perspectives or thoughts on it. Because I haven't really verbalized most of this to anybody before. So, it was, I think it was worth doing just for that. And obviously, so anyone who is into Findom already, and maybe in a similar situation to me, knows that you can try, and that just because they say you'll never escape and you'll never be able to stop, you can. Or at the very least, you can minimize it and definitely get it under control.
Absolutely. And finally, what do you think the future holds for you?
I think the future's looking pretty bright for me. My business is going well. I'm happily married. I've got a good family around me. So I think overall, as if I can just totally kick this, hopefully my savings will start to increase and things will start to look nice.
Absolutely. James, thank you so much for jumping in. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
I hope that if anyone does listen that is in a similar situation, that they know it's okay to reach out and ask for help,
Yes.
and it's okay to find it in any sense. But please be careful with this sort of thing. And before I go, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. But if you are going to comment, before you do, just take a second and think about what you're going to say. Just take a second and just think about it. It'll make a big difference. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. Hope I get a chance to see you on the next one.